It's never been called Sam's Street.
It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
this is true, this is true.
It's all pretty.
Yeah, you'll have to see it.
It wasn't, I just was gonna, I just wanted to talk, that's all. I was just bored driving.
Anytime.
You didn't
My
answer,
ears are
but
open.
Sam answered, but Sam called me.
I actually have to work.
And I had a,
It was ready.
Sam's off at 3:30, so he called me back. I don't
Taking
know.
care of a sick kid.
Who's sick?
Evan. Hanging out at your house, you
I
got
was gonna
sick.
say, she was just at my house.
I was in the middle, I was actually presenting to our president my budget proposal.
And that's more
And it
important.
paused because my phone,
And, yeah, my phone rang,
Oh,
I'm like,
dang.
shit.
sorry.
This is the new president?
No, this is our existing one.
Oh, good, so you have rapport already.
Yeah. He's grumpy too. Yeah.
Watched some pressure.
Yeah, but turn into a Mentos.
Well, yeah, he kind of stuck around and said, I can stay.
That's really cool.
Yeah, right, I don't wanna find out.
Grabbed my
Not here. Let's go outside, we can check it out.
Oh, really?
No chance for me.
So the other is
I drink too much of it. This is actually only my first bottle of coffee today,
Oh, wow.
which is very unusual for me.
For someone who drinks
Right before
coffee,
bed.
that would be.
I've stopped.
I don't go to bed till like 1, so it's fine.
I get my caffeine while coffee.
That's what I've been doing lately. I did coffee this morning and then this was
It gets past noon for me, I can't touch caffeine.
I should probably get better sleep.
Too much.
To be honest with you, sleep apnea would help with the midsection too if I just
Oh, yeah.
gave up on it, you know.
Well, we're on coordination.
Probably would.
That's right. Yup.
And I'm waiting for the since I have a drink coffee provider, I'm waiting for that to feel way better. So
I don't think it's like for me, it never gets like that way so much. So when I gave it up for a couple months, once it was like, yeah, this isn't worth it.
Yeah. I gave it up, last year. That didn't stick.
They are.
That was 40 days of.
Anyways.
What are we doing here? You know, if this was a promise of the Lord, I'd probably break it, but here we are.
Well, that's, I mean, that's the purpose of life, right? Is to do something to enjoy it.
I
So
do that.
that you can
So those things are
experience the, yeah.
My buddy pulls out a bottle. Is it gonna make it another 3 weeks? Because I don't have it.
Or 13 or 3.
That's not gonna make it. Oh, no. Fine.
Oh.
the other willpower.
Something.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
And a wife that went in with me.
Oh, okay, that
So with her not having a glass of wine with her, because he goes through. So when we both walk in the same
What I
room,
meant
it's
by
a different experience, because some people wasn't just me watching her.
there's.
Right, yeah.
It'd be nice to have.
Yeah.
What that's trying to do.
So it's like a side by side.
Yeah, it's crazy how many different things happen over the course of weekends that you're like, this is just a natural social drinking environment. And then you've got, you know, they're like,
Life is full of it.
Yep.
Monday morning he goes.
As you can make it, Mitch.
Okay.
Just in time.
A minute to spare.
slamming some quick nuts over there. One time. There's a lot of solutions, you fall down.
Yeah, I mean, my mom says it's time, but my
I know,
computer doesn't.
I don't see conflict.
I also, I gotta fix that.
That one.
No way to listen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome tonight. Do we have any additions to the agenda this evening?
Mayor, I do have one addition. I'd like to go into executive session at the end of our meeting to discuss pricing strategies as allowed in the Tuckahoe Code.
Mayor, I would also like to add a few items to new business. Item E, annexation of properties using city resources, water, sewer. And item F, property use and zoning along Main Street from Highway 44 to Boynton Avenue.
And Nate, you said it was pricing strategy?
Yeah, give me one moment, I can give you this correct citation. It's SDCL 1-25-2 sub 5.
Okay. Any other items to add to the agenda?
Danny, were you adding exec for?
Yes, yep, executive session, another item for personnel. Development B.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Item C, mayoral proclamation for Calvin Schreiber. Do you have anything on this you want to share?
Mayor and Council received a request by a letter for I think just an acquaintance, I don't think it's a family member of Calvin Schreiber. Calvin lives here in Lennox. He'll turn 100 years old next month. And we're hoping to surprise him with a mayoral proclamation with his family. So.
Is this something I read now?
You can. You certainly don't have to. It can just be approved, given that you're going to be presenting it, or the plan is to present it.
Go to him, because he's kind of stuck in his house. So, yep. I'll look for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second. Here we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion is carried. On to the next item, visitors to be heard. If there's anyone here to share, please step up to the podium and address the council. Seeing that there's none, move on to the next item, consent agenda. We'll look for a motion to approve the agenda, but Nate, do you have any items you need to draw attention to, or any council members want to discuss any matters?
Just one note here, it's not in the consent agenda, but just a notice for the next meeting. Usually that would be on the second Monday, but we'll have that on Tuesday. The 14th is a federal holiday for our ordinances. We move to the next day. So the next meeting will be on 10/15, not 10/14.
So I see that there is a resignation in the police department. Do we need any action on advertising for that position?
Well, that's a position we constantly advertise for as a part-time.
Okay.
So I think we got 3 applications in today. I don't know if any of them were qualified, but one of those at the start.
Congratulations to our library on a successful end of summer picnic. Looks like it was well attended. My apologies for not being present. But I personally had a conflict, unfortunately. Job well done.
Thank you.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any other further discussion? Yep, we'll do roll call. Bowers.
Aye.
Andrew.
Aye.
Sweer.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Welch.
Aye.
Bowers.
Aye.
And motion carries. On to old business. A, Department of Corrections, Lennox wastewater connection.
Mayor and Council, this is simply an update on the discussions and work we are going through to see if this is a project in which we wish to engage. continue discussions with Stockwell engineers and reach out to the process engineers for our original SBR system, that's Xylem. Mitch is here tonight. We do have an updated technical memorandum in your packets for you to review. That goes into a little bit more detail. But our discussions with Xylem learned that some minor adjustments in our treatment cycle would allow us to treat a lot more wastewater than we originally thought. There's also what's called an advanced SBR system that's available that appears to resolve a number of our most significant operational challenges like temperature, continuous flow, ammonia removal, so on and so forth. We have requested a technical memo from Xylem on those issues. We have not seen that yet, but hope to have that this week. Kyle and I are also interested in visiting a local advanced SBR. We have located one in Sheldon, so hopefully we can visit that. I'll let Mitch talk about the technical memo. That includes cost estimates. Overall, though, I'm pretty optimistic right now. I'm probably more optimistic than I have, and that we can handle the flow and acquire the necessary improvements and still be able to pay down some SRF debt. So I'm hoping we can wrap this up in October. Should DOC find their side of this plan feasible. Mitch, if you want to talk through the technical memorandum, I would appreciate it.
I'll go through this, but if we have any real technical questions, I'll probably ask Kyle later. What we have in front of you is just a technical memorandum that our team put together. They've come out, they were already familiar with the facility, and they've come out and met with staff a couple different times, and just to try to get their arms around, this, the DOC looking to bring their wastewater to this location. So when you're walking through the memo, the first paragraph is just a purpose, and then we kind of explain in the next paragraph that we have 3 improvements that we think are probably necessary out there to take that user on. And basically that is the equalization expansion, the drying bed expansion, the aerated equalization tank. And you can see just a summary on each one of those 3, just a brief narrative. And then the second page illustrates just the costs that we're estimating for each one of those, totaling about $4.5 million is what we feel you would need to invest in that facility to have it ready to accept that customer. And then below is future capacity expansion timeline. So you can see, when you're looking at that, you can see across 2044 is what this goes out to. And the blue line is your current baseline. So as you grow, you're going to have more wastewater to treat down there. And we projected that at your current and average growth rate. The orange line is with the Department of Corrections coming online, and you can see how that almost doubles your flow, and then that grows as well with time. And the solid red line at the top is what we feel is the plant is capable of treating without any major expansions. Again, we still need to probably spend this $4.5 million to get it to be able to accept this user again, but we do estimate that it's just under $700,000 that with the proper equipment and proper maintenance and maybe replacing some features along the way that plant can handle.
So Mitch, you say that the original design capacity is just under the 700,000 flow gallons per day, and that's the original, so as it sits today, right? And
Yes.
so where is that projection with the $4.5 million improvements? Where do you see that going? Can you tell me how that compares to what I would call a never event with the water that we had recently?
With the flooding event that we had?
Correct.
And the flooding event is always, infiltration is always going to be an issue, but to combat that, one of the options, one of the improvements in here is to build equalization, more equalization into the plant, so that we can hold that water and store it until the rain subsides, and then we can run it through the plant. That's really that, let's see, the equalization improvement expansion, the $1.7 million. That's what we feel you need to spend to get that in line so that you can absorb those storm events.
This doesn't allow us to treat anymore.
Yeah, so this isn't gonna increase our capacity, it's just gonna set us up to be.
That's right. I mean, and that was a concern of the state at the moment, is because they're aware that, that you have high INI here, and you've had some issues with that past years. We think we've got pretty well in control. We're not having to pump into the ditch or into the streams directly. You have had to do that in years past, but over the last 5 years, we haven't had to do that. Granted, we had a couple dry years, we've got some wet years in here too, where we've made some upgrades, and Kyle made some upgrades, some pumps out there that really seem to help with that. But we still feel and the state still feels it's concerning, and they just want to make sure that that's being mitigated. So they're looking to see that you guys are going to approach, that issue with more equalization.
Yeah, if I could just summarize a little bit of our discussion with the process engineers on this. The treatment capacity is really, it's limited by how we process, how we cycle it through, and what the hydraulic possibilities are. So the size of the pipes, size of the basins. And based on that sizing, we can tinker with the process and the cycle and be able to treat more and still meet our permit. So that's the technical memo we've requested from Xylem to show, what that process would look like.
So it is possible that we go up from 670.
It is,
Do you have any ideas how much?
yes.
Are you in a position?
Not until I get the technical memo. I want to see that first,
So
because
why-
that gets it down in writing what we're looking at here.
Why didn't we know about this before? I guess when they built the plant, why didn't we?
We probably had never needed to handle this much and didn't see.
Probably never had that
foresee that.
discussion. Yeah. It was kind of eye-opening to be on this call earlier or late last week, and
I mean, we're essentially doubling our load in, right?
yeah,
With
which
this.
is still well within our capacity. our
Right, but
design
we would have
capacity.
never really, outside of looking out 50 years,
Had a
expected
reason.
anything like that.
We would never have a reason.
So that's probably why it was never
Yeah.
looked at, I would guess.
Would that be accurate?
We'll have to wait for that memo, like you said,
Yeah.
but I hope there's no confusion between what we currently have and then the advanced one.
Right.
So I just want to get that clarified. But then-
So I just would like further clarification on the capacity and what that looks like moving forward. So you're saying that with the upgrades, it wouldn't necessarily improve or increase the capacity amount, just the way that it's processed?
It wouldn't change
Treating
treatment
capacity,
capacity.
Okay.
It would change our emergency storage capacity
Yes.
significantly. How many gallons was the
Understand that
new
equalization.
EQ fund?
Yes, but
And that's the word,
the original
big
is
event.
almost 700,000, right? So where's it going to be?
It's that part of it,
It's
it's
still gonna be
just the
700.
storage that we.
3.7,
To handle the
Yeah.
plus rule, like, we're gonna have more like.
what do you have right
storage.
now?
So before it goes into the
Three.
plant.
So-
We'll have the ability to hold more, so we can handle that inflow for.
And we don't have a number though, what that amount is.
Well,
Yeah.
the inflow is that this 1.7, the equalization, so that's,
Yeah.
we don't
So
know yet,
the-
we don't know yet what the process improvement is gonna have.
Right.
So
So the size of the new equalization pond would be 3.7 million gallons.
Okay,
Currently, we have about 3.
and that's what we're trying to show at the bottom graph is the capacity of the treatment facility
Sure.
process, but we still need, like right now, we don't, the drying beds, we need more drying beds because we're gonna double, the amount of sludge that we have to be able to handle. It would, those were always meant to be expanded to be able to do more of that as you grew. So that's something that we have to expand because there is gonna be more sludge to deal with. That's a limiting, probably, I mean, that's not necessarily limiting our capacity. The treatment plant can still treat up to this capacity. We're confident
It's just
in.
that's not gonna be a bottleneck. It would be a
Right.
bottleneck unless we.
Right now, those beds might be a bottleneck out there to take this on.
so is there anything that we're missing or that we're not doing? Because are we budgeting at 4.5 million? Is there something that you recommend that if we had more funding,
Yeah.
that you would do out there?
I mean, there's always the wants, the wishes, I mean, I think Kyle would love to have a press out there instead of the drying beds. That gets expensive and we're just trying to be, maintenance conscious, I guess.
Now, is that just more for convenience for our staff and or is it a safety issue, or is it,
I wouldn't say
It's more effective, it's far more effective to
Efficiency.
dry our sludge through a press process than it is through a
what
drying
does
mill.
that
We've got
cost?
a 3.
It's less than if you, I think,
But it's also-
our analysis shows it's probably cheaper in the long run to expand the drying beds rather than going to a press system right now because of the upfront expenses. So essentially with the drying beds, you're probably gonna spend more on maintenance, more on staff, less upfront, but in the long run, we think it's a savings. The other thing, we need to think of something else.
How is the screening? I know that they had mentioned with the
Yeah.
DOC they would screen there, but is our screening, does that need to be improved on our end too?
That's a discussion on the building.
Sure.
We'd love to improve the screening. We'd love to not be in the middle of a building with moisture and, corrosive gases. And
So why aren't
So on
these
and so
things
forth.
that we're writing into the contract, why aren't we asking for those things from the state?
that's something I'd like to discuss in executive session
Okay.
if we need to.
So, let's just say Lennox grows exponentially the next 15 years, and we end up getting to the limit that our plant can handle. What would we do to increase capacity of our
Then-
wastewater treatment plant?
Then you'd be looking at a bigger expansion.
Assuming nothing changes with the plan and we don't go to an advanced SPR or make other changes, you probably have to add a basin.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to replace those facilities, and they're meant for a 20-year design life, and you're at. what, you're
13?
12.
Yeah. So we gotta kinda keep in mind too, that we're always gonna have to make and replace that facility in its entirety at some point when it reaches its. That's why we try not to over-design it and build something that's gonna last you 50 years, because it's never gonna actually last that long.
I think that's one of my concerns is like, okay, 20, 30 years from now, we have to start completely over. And we're also building still for their capacity in addition to ours,
Right.
but are they going to give us additional funding at that time?
I would-
So 30 years from now is when, I imagine, my guess is we'll do a 30-year agreement. The long-term repair and replace needs that we have, regardless of whether we do DOC or not, we have those long-term repair and replace needs. This would secure a funding source for those needs.
And it'd be the annual.
It's the annual
Cost
cost of
payment.
$738,000, give or take.
So getting back to like ballpark in today's dollars, what would we need to invest to increase our capacity by 50% or 100% or whatever is a reasonable?
I mean, that plant you have now, say that's a $15 to $20 million plant.
Today.
Today.
To build it today.
So we'd be looking at probably 25 to 30 million on something bigger, pretty easily, I'm sure.
Yeah, if we're going to start over new and do something different, we definitely wouldn't go the same route that we did
Right.
14 years ago. That's just not, I think the technology's changed. I think we've learned a lot about how SBRs work in the upper Midwest and compared to South. It's just not the route we would recommend going again.
Yeah, and that's the other reason why you don't try to design 50 years out, because the technologies will change so much that you can't guess what those are gonna turn into.
I mean, that's probably a different discussion for a different time, but with the technology advances, is it more cost effective as well, or are those costs even more?
I mean, it's probably, I'm sure it's gotten cheaper over time, but the other item out there is that your permits change over time too. So you're required to reach a higher level with your discharge, so that has a big effect on that as well.
But like the different setup versus an SBR, I mean, are those similar in cost?
Yeah.
I would say yes. The hope would be that you could retrofit something instead, but we just don't know.
Man, what I'm seeing out of this is, we need to understand what that capacity increase is, and how far up does that raise that red line?
Exactly.
But this isn't a showstopper right now, that this isn't viable for us. I think it's
Right.
showing that it's at least an option we can continue to pursue and, get all of the rest of the facts. And
My hope is by the 15th to have a final go, no-go analysis for all of you, from all of us. That has all of us signing off on whether or not we think this is the right route or not. So, we don't know yet what Sayre is going to find in their feasibility, but we're gonna do our due diligence until that time.
That's all we can do. Are we limiting ourselves to possible other wet industry expansion here?
Yes, but I'd also say white industry probably isn't real likely for us anyway, given what we've got available. You know, we've only got so much water right now. You know, as of 2030, we'll have what sort of matches what our capacity is at the wastewater plant. But the RFPs we're seeing come through for even the dry industries are just, they're not gonna happen here. You know, they're asking for 1 million gallons a day in water. Well, there's only a few places that have that, right? So I don't know why I don't even know why we're getting that email. But there's industries like, you know, Wilson Trailer, you know, we could probably do several of those types of industrial facilities, and still have room. Good, just because they're not very wet. And we can look up exactly what they do in a month, but it's not 25,000 gallons a day.
When we look at our current growth rate on the chart bench that you put together, you show us where we're currently sitting in 2024 with this growth to 2044 and beyond. What years did you use to establish that growth rate?
You know, I'd have to ask our guys, but normally we'll use like a 10-year average.
I was afraid of that, because we've shown a lot more growth in the last 3.
We're still, what, 3.5% is a max for us in the last few years. So it's still a steady growth. It's faster than most communities.
So this is the same growth rate that the state will make us go forward. We kind of go through their process for developing that growth rate. So like when we chase SRF funds, or if we chase funds for your treatment plant down the road, they kind of have a way to develop that growth rate. And we're essentially using that same process.
Okay. So if we were to use our actual numbers instead of the recommended numbers, does that change this?
It does slightly, I mean, but I think we're at 1.25% growth rate. You know, if you plug in the 3%, I can certainly do that for you guys.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Because we
Ballpark.
don't have any plans of slowing down.
Yeah.
We want more people to move here.
Ballpark, it looks like about a 28% increase in 20 years. It seems a little light, maybe.
I'd be interested to see this based on actual instead of recommended. Another comment, I go for a lot of walks around town, and my ward is awfully close to the wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah.
I've never smelled it,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. With this expansion, what are the odds of increasing odor that our community would have to endure?
So we've talked about that, and that was a concern of ours early on. I mean, and Kyle, you might have to speak to the order to some ends, but I know, you know, part of our concern was making sure that when this waste comes in and your waste come together, we want to make sure that waste is consistent, so that we're not having this surge of the prison sewer, and Kyle's not have to dialing the buttons in to treat their waste and then our, because it's quite a bit different loadings. And so part of the design here is we feel we need this aerated mixing tank to help blend that together. I know they had talked about elements of odor control being brought in. Maybe you would want to speak to that, Kyle.
I guess the biggest concern for odor would be the addition to the drying beds. I mean, if you see it out there, it's essentially just a concrete slab with biosolids, you know, exposed to the air. So there's some times when you get wind direction there, you can get an odor off of it. I think that would be probably a big, not a big concern, but a concern for odor control is expanding, you know, we're not using that press, we're just putting solids up, you know, to open air. So that concern is there.
Mitch said there was a possibility of remediation that's being looked at from an odor perspective.
Yeah, I know our guys were looking at they had that same concern, and I don't think they wrote it in here to know exactly how they were approaching it, or I think we didn't discuss if there's something that the DOC can do on their end.
That's what I was wondering.
Right.
In their
This is-
pre-treatment
The
process.
problem is when it goes 10 miles, it just gets septic.
Right.
And that's not right back, so.
But that's a good point for that, that blending tank, or that aerated, equalization tank. It'll help kind of blend those two wastes together and hopefully eliminate some of that air, or that odor. And
Don't cut
adding
back.
air will help.
You know, once they talk about it, chemical or something.
There's options for a chemical feed, but that'll be something we have to.
Can we set up a time to view the wastewater treatment plant and maybe walk through it?
Absolutely.
Glad you asked. That would be a great time to schedule a wastewater treatment facility tour, and I'm gonna be sending an email around to try and make that happen.
Is there anywhere else, I know you briefly said earlier that you and Kyle are going to be visiting another area. Is there a wastewater treatment plant that takes in, close to 700,000 gallons or has a large use from not maybe necessarily a prison, but something similar?
Industrial.
Right, like a big industrial area that we could, visit, ask questions.
Still Rapids have, I mean,
But there's not a real, they have an SBR system or anything like here.
But they're probably only 250.
Yeah, I can't think of any big user that they're serving. like that.
Sheldon would be a good.
Sheldon would be good one. They got Rose Bowl, they got
Yeah.
a couple others.
I'd be interested in touring something like that that's going to be similar and what it looks like, if you have an idea of something.
With these expenses we're looking at, this changes our ability to pay off some of the debt that we currently carry that we'd looked at initially. Any estimate as to what that would look like now with this expense?
Not at this point, no. There's some discussions I've had with the state on, what changes we could make to that current agreement that Harrisburg had that would result in more funding up front for us and less longer term funding, so. There are some possibilities there, that should need to be explored more, but that'll all be included in a final recommendation.
Good.
Yes.
Quite certain, I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone here, but I'll speak for myself. It's about what's best for our citizens. And handling this the right way, as openly as possible, where we go through every element of this, and we're educated on every element of this, so we don't put ourselves and our citizens in a tough spot, is this council's goal. So the more the merrier. Bring on all the analytics, bring on all the information. We need to know it all. They're tasking us with guiding us down this path.
This is a major decision
Yeah.
that has long-lasting consequences, good, bad, or otherwise, for us.
Right. And I can see scenarios playing out in all different directions, so.
So with their, it's called the screen, right, at DOC that it goes
Yes.
through before it comes here.
Pre-screen.
So let's say the pre-treatment is not up to par with our standards, like what's the process for that? Who is our middle liaison between us and the DOC?
So I would say one thing about the pre-treatment on their side is they do have to pump it here. So that kind of on its own takes care of any, they have to burn the screen to be able to get all the solids out of there, or else it'll ruin their pumps. Now, like Springfield's another example where, they had issues with, stuff coming from the prison and coming through their system and getting into their system. That's all a gravity system that comes there. And so they do have some issues there with they need to do more pre-treatment. When you're pumping it like this, and it's to their benefit to screen it as much as possible, or else they'll never be able to get it here.
And if we have issues, like let's say they're not getting it here,
Yeah.
and maybe that's gonna be in the contract, but then who's responsible for that piece? And are they going to contribute more funding when that happens, or build more infrastructure? What is that?
I mean, if it's something on.
They would own it up until our,
They would own it up to the point it gets into our system. So everything up to that point is their responsibility to maintain, so on and so forth. We have the right to inspect under the agreement that that's what we would want to have. If we see something coming through, that's going to kill our plan, that's something that we're going to be working, I mean, we're gonna have to do a hard stop right away.
Yeah, you have the ability to shut them off
You'll have to.
at any time if there's any kind of issue like that. I mean, that's probably.
That's something we can do with Wilson, something we can do with Steel, Quaker, we have that right as the entity responsible for protecting and receiving waters in South Dakota. We have that right and responsibility, so.
Why would the state, sorry, I just wanna have all my questions answered and I don't know the right person to ask. But why would the state, why would the DOC want to bring it this far and not just create holding ponds or something closer?
Lagoons are messy, high maintenance, you know more about lagoons than I do. You can't even discharge them anymore.
Aesthetically, it looks, I mean, if you drive, you see what a lagoon looks like.
You drive where, sorry?
And
T, yeah.
yeah, you'll see that.
And that
that's
you
the
can
lagoon.
smell for a very long
Right,
time.
so odor is for a lagoon is,
Yeah.
as far as them building their own facility, I mean, you gotta look at, licensure, and now you have to have a full-time employee to do this, so that could be a limiting factor for them.
And it's hard to find those people, so,
Right.
that's just, that is
That's
what
real.
they've expressed, is that they really don't wanna have to maintain their own facility. They would rather work with a community like you that has a system in place that they can, because I think it's just the maintenance.
Sure.
Now, they did mention at our last meeting, for rain events, they would have their own.
They may have an EQ pot of their own,
Yes.
yeah.
Right, 160-acre flood field essentially.
That's what I have available. So you could do a diversion to that for temporary storage if you needed to, and if they're open to that,
If they're open.
that'd be a great deal for us.
Right, that was
Help us out a
the
lot.
state's response to my direct question.
Right.
Yeah, and on the state side, you really shouldn't have an issue with iron. It's all gonna be new PVC pipe. And those systems nowadays are tight, so they really shouldn't have an issue that way. But they will be putting those facilities in that,
What?
they need a little bit of space utilization.
What's ionizer?
Just for groundwater getting into the sewer system.
Okay.
Influent and filtration.
The reason why you guys have such a problem with this is you still have a lot of outdated infrastructure underground that we still water in, whether it's the clay pipes or.
Well, if they did have
We can't exactly.
Some pumps.
It's
Over
the aged,
manholes.
it's the aged, piping systems underground. And the PVC that we put in over the last, how many years has just been, great at keeping that water out of there.
And, yeah, we have folks sometimes too will say, well, we only got so many pipes in town, we can't get that much water.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got 16 miles of sewer main, plus probably another, I would say probably the same service lines, so another 16
Service
miles
lines,
of
yeah.
service lines that aren't maintained.
And the other thing
That's a
from
lot.
from the state's perspective is every gallon they send you, they have to pay for it. So again, it's to their benefit to make sure that runoff is not getting into
Right.
that system, because they're, you'd be charging them for it.
What size pipe would they be running?
I don't know if they said this.
We would have the right to, we have to approve the
There's
design.
equations for friction loss and,
Just
They might, they might do, I bet you they do dual mains, just in case one.
I was gonna say, pretty much zero chance of INI, otherwise the sewage is gonna be everywhere. I mean,
Right, yeah.
It's gonna go out, it's not gonna come in.
it'd be a force main.
Right.
It's tight.
Has there been any discussion about location or route?
Do we know what side of town it would come in? Or how it,
Oh, it'd have to come in from the east.
can it come direct into it wouldn't hook into our existing?
No, I'd go straight to the plant. That's what we would want. Nothing's probably what they want to do. They don't, I don't think they want to have any future connection to it.
Could they run it in the ditch along 44 to reduce
Depends on
the,
the size.
just wondering if, to reduce the amount of residential properties that it's gonna run through?
They might, I mean, they'll look at all those, I mean,
Depends on
I
available.
wouldn't be
right of way.
surprised if they end up in the state, in the right of way for those reasons, just to
Wet there,
really get property and those things.
it's gonna be really wet in those ditches.
Couple
Any other questions, comments?
I'm sure we'll have a lot more.
I'll send an email around about getting, tour schedule. I know Alderman Swear had mentioned that. Some of you have probably been out there before, but I think, it makes sense to see this in action and how, what happens to that water once it gets to the plant, how is it processed through. Makes a lot more sense, I think, to see it, helps out a lot, so.
Earlier, Nate, you talked about there was some information that maybe could only be released in exec. Do we need to have that discussion tonight? Okay.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Thank you. All right, that's it for old business. On to new business, ambulance grant application.
Mayor and Council, this is a grant application for the Regional Services Designation Grant with South Dakota Department of Health. The grant itself would pay for a couple of items. The first is Guardian Angel safety lights. So this is lights that our EMTs and paramedics would wear on their shoulder while they're on the shoulder of a roadway at night. Lots of close calls, and I think you'll see whether it's Department of Public Safety or one of our local tow truck companies, there are a lot of risks when you're sitting on the side of a road. Your attention is not necessarily on the traffic. Another part of this would be the initial setup for an app called Hand Tevi. I was able to watch this in action the other night during the ambulance training. It's pretty cool. It has all these set protocols. And the reason this would be a regionalization grant applicable item is because it sets up the same protocols that all the Minnehaha services are using. So when we look at our own responses, the likelihood that we get called to a mass CAD event in Sioux Falls is fairly high. The training itself is on there as well. It'll be training for 2 administrators, then the annual service at $32.50 a year for 2 years. Typically, I'd put a grant like this on the consent agenda, but I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to discuss the long-term costs after those 2 years, and whether you think that's a worthwhile expense. Don't have to necessarily make that decision today, but there are ongoing expenses with this grant. Right now at $32.50 a year, that you'll need to take into consideration at some point.
Any discussion?
You said $32.50 per year for
Per
2
year,
years?
per maintenance.
It's tough to really know. I mean,
How much is the grant for?
Total grant is $12,288. And again, I mean, it's a 2-year service agreement, I suppose, and if we decide that maybe this isn't so much worth it, our EMTs haven't been using it much, then we cut it off in 2 years as well. So that's an option.
I imagine they want a 2-year commitment, is that?
I'm not positive. Most of these will be a 1-year service agreement. Even our app, I think, was a 1-year service agreement renewable.
All right, any other discussion with this? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve the grant application.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. On to B, T ambulance grant letter of support.
Mayor and Council, the City of T is also applying for one of the regionalization grants from Department of Health. Their application is different than ours. They're applying for an EMS study to be conducted for T. As you may know, currently T doesn't have a permanent EMS provider with anyone. They don't have a contractual agreement with any EMS provider. We do respond to a number of calls in their jurisdiction each year. We have very informally discussed the possibility of an eventual service expansion. This study will provide guidance and recommendations to T for how they should move forward for this. Fitch and Associates is the firm that they anticipate using. Fitch is very familiar with both the statewide EMS system and the regional EMS system. They provided a study for Department of Health back in, I think it was 2019 or 2020. They also conducted the assessment for Turner County back in 2021, I believe it was, so. Alan and I have spoken about it, we both agree it's a worthwhile endeavor, and does not really pose a significant competition with our grant application, and recommend approval of the letter of support.
So for T's grant application, if they're going through the Department of Health, EMS, and that's where our grant application is going, I know you said it's not competition, but if it's coming from the same pool of funding, from the same grant application, would that not be a direct conflict of interest if we're both applications to the same funds?
It wouldn't be a conflict of interest because none of us are benefiting directly from it. It would simply be that we are competing for some of the same pot of $4.3 million.
Motion to approve letter of support.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. On to C, resolution 2024-92301, schedule of fines and fees.
Mayor and council, this is an interesting one. All we're doing with this resolution is making it clear that we don't charge non-residents fees for using our library. I'm not even gonna read through the entire memo. I recommend a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve resolution 2024-92301. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
Can I ask a question on that for Audra? Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So for non-residents, can you clarify if a non-resident is here, or let's say a grandma has a year-over summer, can they get a library card or use library resources without being a permanent resident? Okay.
I don't turn anyone away.
Well, thank you for that.
And this designation was for our accreditation that you get yearly, correct? So that was just one
Oh, I
of the
see.
things that they
Okay.
needed on file, so that she can, when she does her accreditation renewal, that we have it in our meeting minutes that we are not charging non-residents, so that was
Perfect. Thank
It
you.
all seems a little bit silly, but we're gonna go ahead and,
it's the formality.
yes, make it happen.
Appease the accreditor. It's a good thing to do.
Exactly.
I'm getting a sticker this week for it, so,
All right.
so it'll be on the window.
The accreditation sticker, not just like a gold star.
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
It's not like a gold star.
All right, on to D, resolution 2024-92302, surplus equipment.
Mayor and council, this is wrapping up the iPads we need to dispose of. 3 were able to be cleared, 2 just need to be destroyed. We could not get into them at all. 2 of these iPads are going to be allocated to Lennox area ambulance to use with that new app. It does not need an internet connection, though they do have, I think we do have a connection in the ambulance. So this would be one of the options to have those in each of the buses, and then the other one's going to go to the fire department. Recommend a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can we get told who's had to get destroyed?
Probably find out. So here's, one of them has been passed down so many times that the person that, they're no longer around,
Okay.
put it that way. I can't remember what the other one was, but I can find out. There'll be a betting pool.
Give me our raffle to see.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. And then we're on to a new agenda item under new business here, E, property annexation for properties for water and sewer.
Mayor, I asked that this be added. I believe it came to light in a planning and zoning meeting a while back that there are some properties here in town that may be receiving city services such as water and sewer and are not annexed, and per our ordinances, that's against our ordinances. So, Kyle, I don't know if we've done some, Kyle and Nate, I don't know if you can speak to this, if we've done some research to figure out which properties those are.
It wouldn't take much to figure out which properties, I mean, I think they're all gonna be water, I don't think any of them will be sewer. And I mean, we could certainly put some work into what that looks like. When we talk about annexation, there's two methods, if I remember right. One is by petition of the landowners. The other, I think you have to go through an annexation study, with the main question being, are these properties really urbanized and no longer rural? Or is there a reasonable chance that they'll be urbanized in the near future? So if you're talking about, you know, what is an urbanized versus rural lot look like? Is it developed in their house? Are they receiving municipal services? Those are the things that they typically look at, but I'd have to go to the CCOG and ask how that specifically works.
So if there is a property that's outside of city limits today that's receiving city water, are they receiving it for free and we don't know? I mean, how,
They're being billed,
okay.
yeah, but they are receiving a city service. And the challenge here, and typically what you hear come up when these discussions happen is, you've got, you know, a property just outside of town is getting city utilities, maybe, you know, a paved road that's plowed on a regular basis when it snows, it's maintained, so on and so forth. You're basically getting all the benefits of living in town without paying the taxes of being in town.
So they're paying for the service that they're receiving outside of the city tax, property tax, is
Right.
what you're saying.
Right, they would, instead of paying municipal tax, they pay a township levy instead. But we can certainly put some work into researching this more and finding out, you know, how does this work, how does this all come together, and come to you with a recommendation.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Okay. And then item F, property zoning and use along Main Street from Highway 44 to Boynton.
Yeah, again, this is something that came up, actually last year during planning session for, the comprehensive plan. It was mentioned that, you know, a lot of our properties that used to be businesses along Main Street are no longer, or they've been, maybe rezoned to something that they weren't intended to be initially. I have quite a few new neighbors near me, and it was brought up, what happened to Main Street? So I think it's time we maybe need to look into that. I know some surrounding communities have some ordinances that kind of help maintain their main streets, so I think maybe this is something we should designate to our planning and zoning committee, or commission to look into, to see if we can kind of restore that.
So what are those other ordinances? Do you have any details on what?
Yeah, so Centerville has, I don't know the exact details without looking at it, but Centerville does have an ordinance, that just states if a building is vacant, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, because I might,
Yeah, it was a vacancy ordinance, if I remember
Yes.
right.
so that it's essentially preventing vacant buildings on their main street. So if it's zoned as, commercial or business, but general business, that it's being used as such, and it's not just being used as essentially storage.
There was I'd have to go back and look at the Centerville ordinance. This has been in place for probably 3 years down there, 3 or 4. And what it was meant to discourage vacant storefronts on Main Street. And Centerville's been fairly successful overall in keeping an active business front on Main Street, but they still have some of the same challenges we have. And so if I remember right, they had instituted a vacancy fee for those that were found to be vacant, but I'm not sure how that's all post-implementation. I'm not sure how that's been received or how it's done, so. But it is, you know, when you look at, I think of North Main coming south on Boynton being your first introduction to Lennox. And, you know, we've talked about whether we want that to be, whether that view as current is what we want people to see long-term as they come into our downtown. Is that an inviting, welcoming downtown that's flourishing? And in some cases, it's not. That's not the look that we have, so.
The flip to that is people bought these properties legally with whatever intended use they had. And if it's a storage space to them and they bought it legally, how do we now impose something different?
Well, yeah, and it's not necessarily about whether the purchase was legal, it's more about land use and zoning regulations. It's entirely possible that, let's just use the storage, it's being used for storage example.
Okay.
It's entirely possible that that they purchased this 30 years ago and it's used as this has been its use since that time. And 30 years ago, our ordinances did allow storage
Right.
in the central business district, but now don't. You know, we probably have to, cede that case, right? I mean, as you call it grandfather, but we call it a non-conforming use. Once that use changes again, or once the building changes hands again, that's the point at which you have to enforce.
That's what I wanted clarity on. I didn't
Right.
want us to suddenly, go on about face and try and do something
Right,
against what's been established.
right. I think it starts with a conversation, right, with the central business district and probably a few general business districts as well. So I think North Railroad Tracks might be general and some light industrial, so.
Right, I like the concept, I just want to make sure we go about it properly and equitably for those that are stakeholders in this.
Mhm.
Yeah, my worry, and I like where Lauren's, proposing, and let's look at this and make it, see what we can do with it, but my worry is there's so many smaller towns in South Dakota that their main streets are just empty buildings. And it just looks depressing, the draw of people moving here, it just, you wonder if they're, it's gonna close down or what, but yeah, it's good that we can be a little bit proactive with this now. What do you do with those businesses that are those storage units now or whatever, but as, we've got, the new chiropractor, Eric Haley, took over residency here with the other chiropractor, and it's like, that could have been an empty building, so.
Right.
So it's good to see that, and what incentive can we do as a city to make businesses come to Main Street? And so I know a couple of years ago, there was a grant if you wanted to, address the front of your building.
So,
That's
Yep.
still happening.
Yep, just those type of incentives and to be forward thinking that way too. So I support that we look into this and figure out how to have a win-win.
I think it's important just to note that, this is a discussion, this is us doing our homework, right?
Yeah, we're not taking.
It's not taking action to rip anyone's property out.
Right, that's what I wanted to make
Like
clear.
that.
This isn't action towards anybody or against
Right.
anybody.
Yeah, this is simply an opportunity to learn what the possibilities are, and maybe dream big a little bit about what's out there and what we could do.
Well, and population growth does a lot for us,
Mhm.
because once you start to continue this growth trend we're on, these properties downtown become more attractive, which then makes it more incentivizing for someone who owns it today to sell for a business that wants to move in. Right now, if there's no businesses that want to buy the spaces, what's their urgency?
Right.
So hopefully, all we're doing to expand our city and make it as attractive as possible will go a long way towards the revitalization of our Main Street, excuse me.
Yeah, I just know that on previous surveys, we've seen that people want a vibrant Main Street, and then hearing that at our block party from somebody who just moved here from Alaska, it's like, yeah, what did happen to our Main Street? And there's some longtime residents that said it wasn't always this way. And I can speak for that too, even 10 years ago, it wasn't what it is now. So it'd be nice to get some discussions rolling, and like Nate said, it may be just discussions with property owners to see, maybe they do have a dream for it, and how can we support that, to your point, so.
Thanks.
Thanks. Any other discussion with that? Okay, that's it for new business. On to executive session.
Motion to enter exec.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, I declare this an executive session, 7:54 PM.
Bye.
Bye.
Audrey, you go to Aberdeen?
Yes, I leave tomorrow.
Safe travels.
Thank you. And I'll be back for the
Good night.
meeting on Friday morning.